Okay. Hello. I'm Brooke Glazier of the Northeastern University Game Dev Club, and this is going to be the Slice of Jam 2024 Renpy workshop, where I'm going to go over the program, how to use it, the launcher, and what the language looks like. So before we start, I would like to ask, do you have Renpy downloaded? And do you have a text editor that can edit the program files? Um, Atom is recommended, and I think that's the one that automatically is supported, but also you could use like visual scripting too, and you could use your own like preferred IDE. You just have to make sure that it is associated with the Renpy files. Just a one thing to go through, but you don't have to follow along and complete this tutorial. I'm going to um just discuss how I'm doing things, and then you can use this as a resource later. So what is Renpy? Renpy is a visual novel game engine. It's free, and the scripting language is based on Python. It's super beginner friendly. It's the first game engine that I used, and I have historically had a really good time with it. Um, so here are some examples of some games that were made using Renpy. So you'd recognize titles like Doki Doki Literature Club, Butterfly Soup, Liar Liar, you might not recognize, but it's a good one. So yeah. And then here are some games that I've made with Renpy. I think I've spent a long, dedicated amount of time with 3 games on Renpy that I've made. And yeah, one of the top is my first project, and you can see this is kind of like the basic template. And the second project, I was able to play around a bit more with the UI and customizing how everything looks. So this is how we're going to be structuring this little lecture. So the first part, we're going to do a tour of the launcher. Second part, we're going to start our project. And third, I'm going to talk about the language and how you program in Renpy. And then I'm going to invite you all to try. Okay, so a tour of the launcher. This is what the launcher looks like when you open it. It's pretty basic. You have the projects on the left side, the button to create a new project, um, and then your active projects on the top where you can look at the directory. This is sort of just how the files in the project folder they're laid out in a visual way for you to navigate between everything. So if you want to really quickly look at your images, you just click on it there rather than navigating through your file manager. So I circle the things that you're most likely going to use with a beginner Renpy project. So like I said, projects on the left side, the directory and editing specific files. The script is where you're going to be editing basically everything. That's where you program all of your narrative and stuff. And that's where you'll be doing everything that I discuss in this tutorial. GUI is for editing UI stuff. Screens is another thing. It's more advanced. It's like pop-ups and stuff that comes up like when you click on to go to a menu or something. That's a screen that pops up, and that needs to be programmed. And that's where all of that lives. And then not circled is build distribution, so you can build the game and distribute it. So we're gonna talk about the preferences. So this is where the preferences live, down below the launch project button. So here's what's in preferences. You can set your project directory on the top left, which is super important. You want to make sure that it's somewhere that you like and that you'll be able to easily navigate to it. And then you can also select your text editor. And this is where you could go in and change it to another IDE that you prefer. And then also changing your language, some other launcher options. I like setting it to dark mode because my eyes hurt, etc. So yeah, this is kind of what your directory looks like, super basic. So you have your project folder where all your Renpy projects are stored. New and old project folders will be located here. Then you have your base folder that has the name of your game and contains all the game specific files. The game folder, which contains all files used in the game, .rpy and .rpyc. If you gave a path to a file, it is loaded relative to this directory. And asset, and that has all of your code, art, music, etc. So we're going to go over starting your first project. So you click on the little create new project button on the bottom left of the launcher, and then you get to name it. The basic one that's given through the quick start guide and stuff is my question. So this is just an example. Name your product. And then you get to choose the UI size or the screen resolution. So I find it really important to mention that the size of your art assets and custom UI is dependent on the resolution you choose. I would say it's a good idea to settle on the resolution you want to make your game in before you start creating art assets, so that way you don't have to do a lot of rescaling in Photoshop, because I have absolutely done that where I just wrongly scale things, and it's a little more difficult going in and editing it in Renpy than just like clicking and dragging to rescale something. So having everything already scaled properly is going to save you so much time and effort. So just choose your resolution beforehand, and it saves you a lot. And then you select your accent and background colors. This is good for beginners if you have a really vague concept and you're focused more on narrative, you don't really care that much about customizing your UI. You can just choose a color scheme that you like for your project from this list, and it'll just make super easily readable displays for you automatically that you can still customize the colors for. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the template that it gives you when you start with a blank project. So it gives you a runnable game with placeholder art and text. It supports basic features like rollback, loading and saving, which is really awesome. And it also inputs the basic UI with the colors you chose in the slide before. So this is what the start menu for the basic game looks like. I just named it T. You can see the name of the project and the build on the bottom right. And then you have your load screen preferences, all that stuff on the left side. So then you start your game. And this is the placeholder stuff they give you, and this is kind of giving you a vibe of what Renpy looks like in its most basic form. And this is also a good representation of gray boxing. There's no actual assets that go along with these images, so this is just what the program puts in for you. You just get the name of the file, but there's nothing else. So if I were to create a background room and put it in there, it would change from gray to background room, just for example. And this is what the script looks like for that template. And it gives you some helpful commenting. And it starts it, defines the character, creates the scene. And this is just basically super minimum product for having a functioning Renpy game. Really short. So I'm going to talk about the basics of the Renpy language for if you want to start customizing and making something interesting. So the two most, I wouldn't say most important, but the ones that allow your game to start is label start. So that's where your script will begin, and return is where your script ends, and that ends the game. So if I had start, is this even a game, and return, it's just one button press and then the game is restarted from the start menu screen. So they can be broken into multiple code files, and control can be transferred with jumps and labels. The script is built on Python, and Python code can be used as well. Assets are stored in specific folders in the game directory, and the game begins in script.rpy under start. So I think that's the label start here, begins there. So the basics of the Renpy language, part 1, characters, narration, and generally implementing text. So this is how you add words. They're called say statements, but you don't really have to write say or anything. You just have a single string of dialogue, and that gives no name to the character. It's just a string of dialogue. Or you can add a name with the string. Defining characters. Defining the characters have a lot of benefits. You don't need to type out the name every time the character speaks. You can add custom colors to the name, and you can automatically load images of character and say statements by assigning them an image tag. And the same thing applies for voice files if you have a game with voice actors. And so this is what it looks like if you were to define a really quick character. So you have to do it before the game starts, so the character is initialized before the game runs. So define Marv, character, Marvin, color, and then you can add a custom color for the text. And then I just had Marv say, "Yay, I'm a character." and it would come up with the text color that I gave him, which is just white. And he says that. So the basics of the Ren'py language. Let's get your images in there. Adding images, character art file types can be done with PNG, WebP, or AVIF files. Background art can be done with JPEG, JPEG again, PNG, WebP, or AVIF files. And the name of a file is very important. Images are stored in the images directory and follow naming conventions. When in the game, the images file extension is removed. The file name is forced to lowercase, and that is the image name. So this is what the image looks like. The image name is the tag and optionally one or more attributes. So, for example, BG classroom. BG is the tag, and the attribute is that it's a classroom. And BG tag is for backgrounds. Marvin Game Smile. Marvin is the tag, and Game Smile are the attributes. Marvin is the character. He's smiling and gaming, perhaps. So this is what it looks like when you call images in Renpy. So this is how I like to work with Renpy, just to make sure everything gets done well. First, this might seem kind of random, but it does have to do with art. First, you're going to write what you want to have in your game, design document, and then you're going to outline the art assets needed according to the narrative, define the names for assets, and follow the Renpy naming conventions. And then you're just going to program and gray box everything. So you're going to write in the file names you decided on beforehand and continue to program as if they were there. And then afterwards, you can go through and start to fill in the gray boxing. So not having the files in there won't stop you from proceeding. Okay. And this is a scene and a show. And this is how you initialize images. So scene BG classroom clears everything before it. So if I had Marvin Smile before scene, it would be erased. And then show Marvin Smile is adding a character sprite into the scene. So only one image with a given tag can be shown at the same time. When a second image with the same tag is shown, it replaces the first image. And you can also use hide to hide the image temporarily. So yeah, for example, same thing as before, Marvin Game Smile. Marvin is the tag, and if I were to call another Marvin, Marvin Game Smile would disappear because there can only be one. And if I had two characters talking and I wanted to conceal Marvin, I could say Marvin hide, and he would go away. So now I'm going to talk about transitions and positions. Transitions, if you don't want your images to pop out at you, you can implement transitions. You have to call a transitional phrase after calling images through scene and show like before. So you could say background classroom with dissolve. So it'll fade in. And then positions, by default, images are shown centered horizontally with the bottom edge touching the bottom of the screen. This is usually okay for single characters, but when showing more than one character on the screen or for whatever narrative purpose you need to move the character. To do this repositioning, add an @ clause to a show statement. And this might sound kind of vague written out like this, and there's a lot of documentation to show you what it actually looks like implemented, but you would just basically say like, show Marvin Smile at right at the bottom here. So yeah, Renpy includes predefined positions, left, right, center, and true center, which is actually like centered in the exact center of the screen. And creators can define their own positions and invent complicated moves when you get more advanced into Renpy. So now I'm going to talk about audio. Music is stored in the audio directory. Accepted audio files are Opus, OGG, Vorbis, or MP3. And music is called by calling, music is played by calling play music. For example, play music, audio, happy, MP3, and you're calling the actual directory. Part 5, player choices, flags, if statements. Yay. The menu statement introduces an in-game choice. It takes an indented block of lines, each consisting of a string followed by a colon, and these are the menu choices that are presented to a player. So each menu choice takes its own indented block of lines, which is run when the menu choice is chosen. So the next, jump statements. Jump refers to control transfers control to a label defined using the label statement. After a jump, script statements following the label are run. If there is no jump statement at the end of a block associated with the label, Renpy will continue on to the next statement. So this is just moving around sections. Say there's a flag and you want your character to go to Australia, you make label Australia and jump Australia. You go to Australia. That's a really vague way of saying it, but labels can be defined in any file that is in the game directory and ends with RPY. Essentially, all of the different RPY files are connected. They're just organized differently, so you can separate your script and not have everything all in one giant block. Flags and integers. Nonlinear games require data to be stored and recalled later. For example, it might make sense for a game to remember a choice a player has made and act on the choice later. The default statement before label start initializes the flag. A $ is the Python assignment statement. This example assigns a value to a defined variable flag. So this also shows you a menu. So the default flag is initialized before the start, and the menu colon string, that's one option. I don't know. The flag is true, and then hell yeah, return. Game over. That doesn't do anything with the flag. If-else statements. To check a flag, use the if statement. If the condition is true, the block of script is run. If not, it is skipped. The if statement can also take an else clause, which adds script that is run if the condition is false. And this is kind of adding consequences to the data you stored before. This is more interesting stuff you can do with Python. You can initialize variables and increment variables. This is pretty common across programming. It's plus equals 1. You get plus if you want to just add by 1. Romance points equals 0. There's none. Elif is another one that they have. Instead of just saying, it's just else if before else. So if points are greater than equal to 10, then you go to the best ending. Else if they're greater than equal to 5, so on. And then while loops also exist. So this one basically counts down from the variable count and calls liftoff at the end of the while loop. And then also there's pass, and pass is used to exit an else if or an if statement before, well, you can't just have nothing there, but you can have nothing happen by using pass. So this is basically it for the introduction. It was pretty rapid fire, and it might be hard to call upon everything that we went over, but a lot of it can be done by just modifying the pre-existing template that Renpy gives you. This is a really quick example of one that I made that has a few different things that we discussed, especially with flags, because that's how you make a really interactive game. So here I called intro complete and swag points, and I created a character, which is you. So after start, we have the background classroom, and I ask, did you make it to the end? And the menu is going to ask, did you finish the tutorial? And you're going to say, hell yeah, or hell no. And since you're here, you did complete the tutorial. So I increment or change the Python statements. Intro complete is true, and swag points are now 100. And you go to paradise. So I call the scene as heaven, and I'm showing Marvin Happy Angel. So yeah. And if you said no to that, then I would put you in hell. So, and that's a complete game, technically. So what have we learned? Really quick overview of just the different type of statements that we learned so far. We have label, return, define, scene, show, hide, with, at, play music, menu, default, $, if else, elif, while, pass. Do you remember what all of them do?
Yes.
Yes?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
I think so.
You think so?
I hope so.
What does scene do?
Scene?
Yeah.
That's to show a different background image.
You're correct. Showing a different background image and erasing everything that came before it. Yeah. So now it is your turn. I'm passing it off to you guys. I want you to make some random project to explore the program so you can go your own pace, and I will support you. What's up? Yes, what's your question? Can I use 3D models in Renpy? That's a great question. So recently, 3D models are supported with Renpy. It's not traditional, usually 2D games, but you can actually input 3D models in Renpy and they can be rendered. Fun fact. So this is what I have created for you guys to play around with. And if you can complete the bingo, then I will give you a haichu or a green tea candy. So if you have any questions, you can ask me because I'll be around the room. And if you're watching this asynchronously, you're also invited to complete this. And if you get bingo, you can just tell me and I will congratulate you. Yes. Okay. That's it for the Renpy workshop. Thank you so much for attending. Um, I hope that it was at least somewhat informational, and I hope that the slides can help you go through things. A lot of it is accessible through the Renpy documentation. They do have a really good way of outlining a quick start guide, which basically is what this is, and also more detailed stuff that you might want to get into. And I would say also the Renpy subreddit, it is a bingo tile. It is a really good resource. Um, you might think that the subreddit isn't a good resource, but people really like to help you, and I don't know, there are a lot of friendly, nice people, and they respond very quickly, in my experience. So yeah, thank you.
I have this rumor, sir.
No.